In this exercise we will continue to see how we can use the catalogs and understand the importance of the anchor. First I will save the catalog and I will also close the scene and I will not save any changes. Then I come over to the catalogs and I will create a group of these items. Select them, right click and choose create group, and I will change the name of the group to engine part or engine parts, like so. Then I will double click the folder to open it, and then I will drag the crankcase here to the scene and I move the camera to top front right and fit scene, and I will also drag this cylinder and I will use the shift key to snap it to the center of this hole. Drop it there. As I mentioned in the last video, part 1, every part has an anchor. So the cylinder has an anchor, the crankcase has an anchor, and if we go to the IntelliShape, the IntelliShape itself has an anchor and the pipe has an anchor. So if we look at the anchor of the crankcase, select it, we see that this anchor is pinned. That means if I right click, it means that it is set to disallow drag. So when it's set to disallow drag, I cannot move this crankcase. If I grab the crankcase, I cannot move it in the scene, but I can drag it to the catalog. So I will go back here, click back, and if we look at the anchor of the cylinder, select it, we see that this anchor has a magnet, and if I right click the anchor, we see it's set to drag along surfaces. So it means that I can grab this cylinder and drag it along surfaces. I cannot drag it here in the scene, but along surfaces. So I will drag it along this surface, and then I will drag it to the catalog and drop it here. Now you see that the icon has this shape and this orientation because of the orientation of the cylinder when it left the scene. So now if I drag this cylinder back to the scene, you might think that it will have this orientation when I drop it here on the scene, but it will have the same orientation as the original cylinder, and that's because of the anchor. So if I select the anchor now, we see that this height axis or the local z-axis is pointing perpendicular to the scene, and this axis is always pointing perpendicular to the surface on which it is dropped on. And if you don't want the cylinder to change the orientation when you drag it to the catalog, you can select the cylinder and then select the anchor and right click and set to disallow drag, so it will be pinned. Now you cannot move the cylinder here in the scene, but you can drag it to the catalog and the icon will have the same orientation as the cylinder has in the scene. But you can also do it in another way. If you come over to the scene browser, you can drag the cylinder from the scene browser and drag it to the catalog, and it will have the same orientation as the cylinder in the scene, and now it is depending on the camera angle, and the anchor setting doesn't matter in this case. So I will remove these parts from the scene, and then I go to the starter catalog and I will drag a cylinder and drop it here in the scene, and I will also paint it. I will use the paint folder or the paint group, drop it here, and I will choose orange matte, double click, and then I go back to engine parts and I will change the name of the cylinder. Come over to the scene browser, change the name to part, and I will also expand the part and change the name of the cylinder to IntelliShape. Then I drag the part to the catalog, and then I go to the IntelliShape level and drag the IntelliShape to the catalog. So now we have a part and an IntelliShape in the catalog. So now if I drag this part to the scene, it will be treated as a part because it's already a part in this catalog. And now we have two parts here in the scene browser and on the scene. If I drag the IntelliShape and drop it here in the scene, the IntelliShape will also be treated as a part. So now we have 3 parts in the scene. So I will remove these 2. And if I drag this part and drop it on this part in the scene, this part will now be treated as a part because it is already a part in the catalog. And if I drag the IntelliShape and drop it on top of this part, it will be treated as an IntelliShape. We see the handles, and if we come over to the scene browser, we see now that this new IntelliShape is treated as a feature of this part. So I will remove these. And now if I right drag an IntelliShape and drop it on this part, I will get a box where I can choose to drop this IntelliShape as an IntelliShape feature or a part or assembly feature. So I will drop it as an IntelliShape feature. And if I right drag this part and drop it on this part, I will not get the option to drop it as an IntelliShape feature or as a part or as an assembly feature because it is already a part. So this means that a part is always a part, but an IntelliShape can be treated as a part or an IntelliShape depending on where and what it will be dropped on. So that means if we go to the starter catalog that every shape you see here are IntelliShapes. So if I drag this cylinder and drop it here on this part, it will be treated as an IntelliShape and it will be a feature of this one. So I will go back to engine parts and I will remove all parts from the scene. And then we will continue in the next video.